This is the Architect Exam Podcast, the official podcast of the Young Architect Academy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Layla, and welcome to another episode of our ARE Prep podcast series. Today, we're talking about construction types, one of the most fundamental concepts you need to understand for the architect registration exam. Why do I find this topic so fascinating? Well, construction types are essentially the building code's way of categorizing how buildings respond to fire, and they influence everything from how tall a building can be to what materials we use. So I struggled with this concept myself, but once it clicked, I realized how it ties together so many aspects of design and safety. Now, imagine if we built a 20-story skyscraper the same way we build a single-family home. That would be a disaster waiting to happen, right? So in this podcast, I'm going to break it down for you. We're going to talk about what construction types are and why they matter, the 5 main types and their key differences, how these types affect real building designs, and common misconceptions that trip up ARE candidates. And if you find this helpful, remember I created the Building Codes 101 course specifically for ARE candidates like you. It's available on the Young Architect Academy as part of our ARE 101 course series. Now let's get started. What are construction types? So at their core, construction types are categories that classify buildings based on their fire resistance and materials used in construction. The International Building Code defines 5 main types, labeled with Roman numerals from 1 through 5. Type 1 has the highest fire resistance, while type 5 has the lowest. Think of it like choosing the right material for different products. We don't make umbrellas out of paper because they'd fall apart in the rain, right? And we don't build high rises out of wood studs because they wouldn't provide enough fire protection for all those people. Construction types are all about matching the building's fire safety to its size, height, and use. And here's why this matters for the ARE and real practice. Selecting the wrong construction type can lead to a lot of things. So projects that violate code requirements, unexpected budget increases, and designs that simply aren't safe. Let me share a quick example with you. I once worked with a client who wanted to add 3 stories to their existing 1-story retail building. So the problem? It was built as a Type 5B construction, which has strict limitations in terms of height. We either needed to change our design, upgrade to higher construction type, which obviously meant major reconstruction, or find another solution like creating a separate structure. So understanding construction types saves you from these kinds of expensive surprises. So how do construction types affect building design? So construction types really influence almost every aspect of building design. So your building height and area are directly tied to construction type. A Type 1 building can reach the sky, so think about skyscrapers, while Type 5 typically maxes out at 3 to 4 stories in most cases. There's also the cost implications, which are huge. So generally, each step up in construction type means it's going to have a higher cost. So Type 5, which is the wood frame construction, might cost $200 per square foot, while Type 1 could easily be double that. You also have material selection. So that's obviously constrained by type. So Type 1 and Type 2 require non-combustible materials, while Types 3 through 5 allow varying degrees of combustible materials like wood. And there's also design flexibility, which changes too depending on the construction type, because different structural systems come with different spanning capabilities and space configurations. Let me paint a picture. So imagine a 5,000 square foot building. So as a Type 5, it might be wood framed with 2x6 walls and conventional trusses. As Type 2, it would have steel columns and beams with metal decking. And as Type 1, it would have mainly heavily protected structural elements, maybe concrete columns with additional fireproofing. Same size, completely different buildings.
You're listening to the Architect Exam Podcast, your guide to passing the ARE.
Hey there, we know you might be driving, working out, or just on the move while listening to this Construction Types podcast. So taking notes probably isn't an option right now. But don't worry. After recording this podcast, Layla and I sat down and created a fantastic set of study notes that we formatted into a handy 2-pager PDF. Visit youngarchitect.com/types. That's TYPES to grab your free study notes to print and add to your ARE exam materials. Now back to the podcast.
Now, let me take you through each of these 5 types. I like to use analogies to help you remember their characteristics. So let's start with type 1, which is fire resistive. I think of type 1 as the fortress of construction types. These are buildings designed to withstand fire for extended periods, typically between 2 to 3 hours for structural elements. They're built using concrete, protected steel, and other non-combustible materials. Where do you see type 1? High-rise buildings, hospitals, and large civic structures. Think of a skyscraper downtown. It's designed to contain a fire and stay standing for hours. So it's going to give people time to evacuate and also give time for firefighters to respond. And then we come to type 1 construction actually has 2 subtypes. So we have type 1A, which is the most stringent with a 3-hour structural frame rating. Type 1B is slightly less with 2-hour rating. This is your most expensive construction type, but allows virtually unlimited height and area. But for your client, you also need to do your due diligence. So we don't just say, okay, I'm going to design an office and I want it to be, several stories high. Let's say you want it 8 stories. I'm going to just go with type 1A. Just because type 1 allows you to virtually have like unlimited height and area doesn't mean that any project you have, you're going to actually use type 1. So you have to do your due diligence towards your client. So remember, type 1 is going to be the most expensive. So if you can design the building with a different construction type that's less expensive than type 1, then we wouldn't want to go to type 1. We want to go and meet the code requirements. So maybe our building for our client can really follow the codes for construction type 3, for example, type 3B. So it's going to be a less expensive option. And so we do have to do our due diligence towards our client and not go with just the most stringent because we can do anything. We look at our requirements, we look at the occupancy, and then from there we go and select our construction type. Then we have type 2, which is non-combustible. Type 2 is the middle ground of construction types. These buildings use non-combustible materials like steel, concrete, and masonry, but with less fire protection than type 1. So just picture a steel file cabinet. It's not going to burn, but it might warp or collapse in intense heat. Where do we see type 2? So we look at schools, warehouses, big box retail stores. Many commercial buildings are type 2 because it balances cost and safety. Just like type 1, type 2 also has 2 subtypes. Type 2A, which provides a 1-hour fire resistance, and type 2B that has little to no required fire protection on structural elements. So just think of type 2B like an exposed steel frame warehouse, non-combustible, but not highly protected. Then we have type 3 construction, which is ordinary. So type 3 is sometimes called ordinary construction. I think of it as the mullet of construction types. Business in the front, party in the back. So it features non-combustible exterior walls like masonry or concrete, but allows combustible, usually wood, for interior elements. Now, let's think about type 3. Where do we see type 3 construction? Old Main Street buildings, modern rise apartments, and mixed-use developments. That brick building downtown with wood floors, yeah, that's probably a type 3. Again, we have 2 subtypes for this one as well. So we have a type 3A that requires a 1-hour rated interior elements. Type 3B allows non-rated interior construction. So this construction type is popular for, let's say, a 4 to 5 story apartments because it's more economical than types 1 or 2, while still allowing decent height and area. Next up, we have type 4. So type 4 is heavy timber. So type 4, I think about it as the gentle giant of wood construction. The distinctive feature here is the use of large dimensional lumber. Think big wooden columns, beams, and plank floors. These massive wood members char on the outside during a fire, but they retain their structural integrity longer than small dimension lumber. Now, just like the other types, where can I see this type 4 construction? So historically in factories, mills, and churches. Today in modern mass timber buildings, we think about breweries, trendy offices with exposed wood structure. So type 4 traditionally didn't have subtypes, but newer codes have added some variations for taller mass timber buildings. And heavy timber is experiencing a renaissance in modern architecture due to sustainability benefits and also warm aesthetic of exposed wood structure. Last up is type 5 construction, which is wood frame. So this is the most common construction type for homes and small buildings. This is a conventional light wood frame construction. So you think about 2x4 or 2x6 studs, wood joists, plywood sheathing. So it's what most houses are built from. Now, again, where do we see this type 5 construction? So single family homes, for example, townhouses, small apartment buildings, small commercial structures. So basically, most buildings that are under 3 stories. And again, just like all the other construction types, type 5 also has 2 important subtypes. Type 5A, which is protected. It requires a 1-hour rated construction for structural elements. And we also have type 5B, which is unprotected. So it has no fire resistance requirements for the structure. And as you may know, this is your most economical construction type, but it comes with the highest fire risk and strictest limitations on height and area. So let's look at understanding the subtypes A and B that we just mentioned. You probably noticed most types have A and B variations. Here's a simple version. A means additional fire protection. It's like adding a raincoat to your outfit. B means basic protection, or sometimes none. So just the standard clothes, no raincoat. So the A and B distinction has real implications. So type 1A versus type 1B. So that extra 1 hour of fire protection means you can often build several stories taller. Type 2A versus type 2B, adding 1 hour protection to otherwise non-combustible materials. Type 3A versus type 3B, making the wood interior elements more fire resistant. And for type 5A versus type 5B, the difference between protected and unprotected wood frame. Now, the A subtypes cost more, but they do allow for larger and taller buildings than their B counterparts. Let's talk about how these types play out in real buildings. So single-family homes are almost going to be a type 5B because it's economical, and the smaller building size means less risk. Mid-rise apartments, typically they're going to be a type 5A with fire-rated assemblies, or type 3A, so you have a non-combustible exterior wall because they balance cost with needed fire protection for multiple units. High-rise offices typically are going to require a type 1 construction because of their height and occupant load. The code simply doesn't allow tall buildings in combustible construction. So one trend you might have heard about is the 5/1 or podium building. So a concrete first floor, which is a type 1, with 5 stories of wood frame, which is a type 5 above. So this creative approach does maximize the economic benefits of wood construction while meeting code requirements.
You're listening to the Architect Exam Podcast, the official podcast of the Young Architect Academy.
So there is a direct relationship between construction type and how big your building can be. So the more fire resistant the construction, the bigger and taller the building can be. Think about it logically. A more fire resistant building gives people more time to evacuate. So the code allows more stories and larger floor plates. The IBC has detailed tables showing your maximum height in feet and stories and the maximum area per floor for each construction type and occupancy combination. As a general rule, so look at type 1 has essentially unlimited height and area. Type 2 allows moderate height, so let's say 4 to 6 stories typically. When we look at type 3 and 4, they allow modest height, you can say 3 to 5 stories usually. And then lastly, type 5 is the most limited, typically 3 stories or less. Of course, adding sprinklers can increase these allowable heights and areas significantly, sometimes by about 300% for area. So this is why almost all commercial buildings have sprinklers, because it's a cost-effective way to gain more design flexibility. Now, before we wrap up, let me clear up some misconceptions that I see trip up ARE candidates. Brick veneer makes a building type 3. False. So if you have brick veneer over wood framing, it's still a type 5. For type 3, the exterior wall structure itself must be non-combustible. Another misconception, steel doesn't burn, so it's completely safe in fire. Well, not exactly. So unprotected steel for type 2B, it can warp and it can fail quickly in high heat. That's why we do add protection in higher types. Heavy timber burns easily because it's wood. Actually, large timber members, they char on the outside while maintaining structural integrity inside, sometimes performing better than unprotected steel in fires. Also, another misconception, construction type is determined by the best material used. Nope, it's determined by the most combustible / least protected structural elements. So one wood structural element in an otherwise concrete building makes it a combustible type. If I put a sprinkler in, I can build any type anywhere. So no, not really, because sprinklers help increase allowable heights and areas, but they really don't change the fundamental construction type or eliminate all the limitations that it comes with it. So let's recap what we've covered about construction types today. Construction types 1 through 5, they're going to classify buildings based on fire resistance and materials. Type 1 is fire resistive. It provides the most protection, but costs the most. Type 5, which is wood frame, is the most economical, but has the highest fire risk. Now, the most fire resistant the type, the taller and larger the building can be. And also, the A, B subtypes indicate higher or lower levels of fire protection. So understanding construction types helps you design safer buildings, pass your ARE, and also avoid costly mistakes in practice. So if you're preparing for the ARE, I highly recommend checking out my Building Codes 101 course. So this comprehensive course includes almost 5 hours of building code content specifically for the ARE, along with 180 practice questions and 175 flashcards to really cement your understanding. So what makes this course special is that the practice questions come with thorough explanations, so they don't just tell you the right answer, they actually teach the concept to you. All the questions and flashcards are strategically organized from beginner to intermediate and then to the advanced levels. So they continue to challenge you as your knowledge grows. I really poured everything I've learned about teaching building codes into this resource, and I'm really proud of how it helps candidates understand these complex concepts. It's all available on the Young Architect Academy as part of the ARE 101 series. So next time you're walking around your city, try to identify construction types of different buildings. It's a great way to really cement these concepts. Thanks for listening and good luck with your studies. Before we go, think about what construction type is the building you're in right now? Can you identify examples of each construction type in your hometown? How might construction type influence the design of your favorite building? See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Architect Exam Podcast. Ready to take your studying to the next level? Visit our online ARE Architecture School website at academy.youngarchitect.com to learn more about how we can help you. See you next time.